It is truly wonderful to see all of you here tonight. But before turning this over to the speakers, I really want to thank the members of the Democratic Practice Committee of the League of Women Voters. This is an effort that is not one person, but that is many. So with those of you who helped, either, do you want to stand? Do you want to raise a hand? Raise a hand. So I want to have folks see how many of us it took to make this event happen. So thank you to all of you. So tonight we're going to start with Kevin and then have Jennifer speak, and then we'll take questions and answers at the end. And I will facilitate that process.
Okay.
All right, off we go, Kevin.
Thank you, Adrienne. I'll try to speak in my teaching voice, but I'm a little hoarse. I was at the Viking game on Sunday, okay? I really was. And a few lectures all week hasn't given my voice a rest, but it's really a pleasure to see so many of you show up tonight. And I know some of you, many of you have already been to a caucus. So I don't know if I can impart any new knowledge, but I still think it's great that we had a good turnout here tonight, and glad to share what I know. I'm coming at this from 2 points. One, I'm a civics teacher and have been for 34 years. I teach AP government and politics, so I talk in general about what a caucus is and what a primary is and the difference, and even how it works from state to state. I've also probably attended every caucus since I was eligible to vote in 1978, except one. I went to a wedding in Las Vegas in February about 4 years ago. Okay. But I think I've been to about 17 or 18 caucuses. In 1970, I actually was born and raised in Iowa, so my first experience in a caucus was in an Iowa living room in Forest City, Iowa. Of course, in terms of the presidential race, Iowa was the first in the nation caucuses. And it really is about as grassroots as you can get. We were in a living room. There was about 20 of us. It was a non-presidential year. I think we were trying to find a candidate to go up against the new Republican Senate candidate, Chuck Grassley. Seriously. And it was a very informal gathering of neighbors. I was 18, and it was, talk about informal, there was a person who was bedridden in the living room, hooked up to a machine, but this was his house. His wife was running the caucus. That's how informal that particular caucus was. But it was really my first taste of getting interested in presidential politics, and when you're from Iowa, you either like it or you dislike it in a hurry, because everybody, as you know, converges on Iowa for a good year and a half before those presidential races. So that might have been my first real interest in getting into the caucus and grassroots politics that long ago. I remember also in 1980 in the University of Northern Iowa, I attended a caucus there, much more obviously a different setting. We were in the basement of a dormitory. There were 150 of us that we had to kind of break off eventually. But that race, if you recall 1980, Jimmy Carter Butt was being challenged by Ted Kennedy. And so we had the Democratic caucus, but the room was literally divided in half with Jimmy Carter delegates or supporters and Ted Kennedy supporters. So it was a very interesting time and a very exciting time. And you have some other memories, I'm sure, further back, like 1968 and some other things, I know. But anyway, it's, I have just finished up a unit in civics on citizenship. I like to talk all year about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the 3 branches of government, but I end the year talking about citizenship, the importance of getting involved. Today I asked the students one at a time, what are the 10 qualities of a good citizen? They had to make a list. Then each row had to come up with their list. What makes the 10 qualities of good citizenship? And then each class, I send them out, make a list. And I'm pretty surprised at how similar some of those lists are, and I'm actually pretty pleased in terms of what they actually come up with. Not individually, some of those lists are pretty bad, but collectively, those lists are pretty impressive. And if you think about the caucus like that, what can you accomplish by yourself? Some stuff. Some of you are pretty good, but collectively you can accomplish great things. And I think that starts at the caucus level. That's where the grassroots participation really begins. One of the questions I ask my students, what does the Constitution say about political parties? You get all kinds of answers. Well, as you know, or don't. Nothing. There's no mention of political parties in the Constitution. George Washington warned of the dangers of a party system or a two-party system and factions. And so here we are in 2018. The parties are pretty important to our politics, right or wrong. It's ingrained in how we do government. It's ingrained in how we elect officials. It's ingrained in how we elect. And if you think about the chairpersons and majority party and everything else, the speaker, it all is about parties, and still primarily a two-party system with a few exceptions. A Jesse Ventura pops up, or H. Ross Perot or something, but we are basically a two-party system. So the first step then is that caucus. It's that grassroots level. And there's a few things on the handout that I'll talk about in a minute. Two that aren't on there is it's a chance for each party to unify. It's a chance to do grassroots organizations. And you know, I can think about a few, you know, when people are interested in politics when they actually show up. And Tip O'Neill said many years ago, all politics is local, and we can tell when the locals are pretty excited about stuff. I remember 2008, and of course the Democrats caucus for the most part at the Northfield Middle School, and I remember the line of cars that night from the middle school, the lights, because I live right up behind the middle school, and I looked out the window, I could see over the middle school, the lights were all the way down to Main Street. I saw the excitement there. I've been in the old middle school where people were in that gym ready to listen to any candidate that would give them some spark or some information on how can we take the next step in winning elections or getting our agenda you know, in front of the legislature or the Senate or the House. So we can see that this is a chance for excitement. It's a chance to network. It's a chance for candidates to drop in and shake hands. It's a chance for organizations like Take Action Minnesota or Isaiah or other groups, and I'm speaking, I've never been to a Republican caucus, but there's other groups out there that we want to get people mobilized at this early level. And we want them to bring resolutions and ideas with them that maybe we can get passed into legislation. And things like raising the minimum wage or all-day kindergarten paid for, or those kind of things, those start at these. Health care is an issue, education's always an issue. And so people come very passionate about these things. So the grassroots organization is pretty important. You can network, you can mingle, you can sign up to volunteer for this, that, and that candidate, and all kinds of causes at these things. So party unity is born in the caucus system. Now, Minnesota has a caucus system. We also have a primary system as well. And I can maybe just allude to the differences a little bit later. But in 2016, we are now going to go to a primary system for the president. We passed that in 2016 for the 2020 election. But the caucuses won't really diminish, maybe just for presidential delegates to be chosen eventually, but it's still pretty important. Just glancing at a few of the other things. Election of local party leaders I have here, general task. So, you know, sometimes, and I think this may be true of both parties, but you'll get 6:30 is registration. The locations, you have a sheet there. There's a big precinct map in the back if you don't know where you live. or what precinct you're in. But let's say at the middle school, some years, and not often in a non-presidential year, we may have a large gathering in the middle school gymnasium or auditorium, and then break off into the precinct caucuses in each of the classrooms. So that's fairly typical. I don't believe we did that maybe it was 2 years ago or maybe even 4 years ago. But sometimes you might have a mass gathering before you break off into the precinct caucuses. Once you get in a precinct caucus, they'll have a convener. And then that convener may or may not be the caucus chair. If that's something that you'd like to do, you are certainly welcome to take that on. There's usually begging for volunteers to take on these duties. Those precinct chairs can be pretty important going forward as they try to mobilize voters for various things. So election of local party leaders, especially precinct chairs, that's a pretty important part. Election of delegates and alternates to the next level. I know that Jennifer's going to talk about that, maybe the strategies behind that, but it is a chance for you to move on to, as I mentioned here, organizing unit conventions, county or Senate districts. So oftentimes, especially in the midterm, there may be in my precinct 30 people, and they need 12 delegates out of there and 12 alternates. And they got to be gender equal if they can. And so oftentimes they have trouble filling out that number of delegates. So if your goal is to become a delegate to the next level, you know, raise your hand. I've been in certain caucuses where I've had to give a little speech. Why do you want to be a delegate? It always helped when I was 18 or 20 or 24 because we want young people to move on, okay? Encourage your younger, your sons and daughters and grandchildren to be delegates. It's a great experience. I had a student a few years ago went all the way to the national convention, starting right in the precinct caucus, Cliff Martin. So it can be done, and we love young people, as Jennifer would say, and encourage that. So when I talk about picking a delegate to go to the next level, typically that's to the Rice County Convention, but those delegates also get to go to the CD2 convention. Okay? And it's at those different levels, especially the CD2 convention, that you would endorse a candidate this year. I know in the Democratic side, there's Jeff Erdman and Angie Craig. It's Jeff, right? Yes. That are vying for the endorsement. I know Jason Lewis is, I'm sure, running again in the 2nd District on the Republican side. And, you know, that's pretty important to some people in terms of who do you want to be in terms of Congress. You may have to share that with the members of the caucus before they choose you to move on. And I'm sure you'll talk about undecided and other strategies, governors, et cetera. I think there's going to be a preference poll also at the caucus for governor as well. So those organizing units, Rice County, CD2, and the Senate district typically. Now, when Representative Bly and I have been endorsed, the people that endorse us are people that were elected delegates from the precinct caucuses. Okay, and they show up in the Legion in Montgomery or New Prague, and those are the people that endorse the candidates at the House level this year, not Senate, state Senate, but the House, both A and B side of Senate District 20, if you live in that part, they'll need to endorse candidates for our side is the B side. So I haven't heard if Representative Bly is running again. I assume he is, but that's important that we have bodies there to do that. When I won my special election after Senator Neville was appointed to judgeship, that was in 2007, December 5th of 07. And it was in the City Hall in New Prague. And the only people that came were those that were elected in 06 to be delegates to the next organizing unit, which was the Senate District 20. So there was probably 80 people in the room, and that's how I got the endorsement on the 6th ballot. But you don't really often think that, oh, I'm a delegate to the county and the CD2. Well, no, in that case, hey, delegates, we need you for an endorsing convention. There's a vacancy in the Senate seat or the House seat, and that happens all the time. for different reasons, okay? So being a delegate, that's a choice that you should make maybe before you get there. There's probably going to be some people begging for their delegates and alternates. Consider it if you've never done it. I've had the fortune to go on to the state convention numerous times. I've had the awesome privilege of endorsing Senator Wellstone and Governor Dayton and some others in my time at the state convention, but I've never tried to go to the next level. But you know, this is how you start. This is where you start it. The last piece. How am I doing for time? Good. The other part that we have here is proposed resolutions to the platform and action agenda. And I don't know what the Republicans call it. This is your chance to have a say in terms of what goes on in the platform. You might want to glance at the platform to see if your resolution is already there. And then it's a chance to throw out a resolution. The chair will ask for a discussion. You'll vote on it. I think you need 60% before it moves on. Where does it go? It goes to the county level, and I think there to the CD2, and then to the state, ultimately to the national. We do have a state constitution bylaws as well. If it's already in the Constitution, or if it's already in the platform, the action agenda might be those things that you want to rise to the top of the platform that we need some real specifics on. Yeah, we're for health care for everybody, but you know, is it single payer? We want wages for higher wages for everybody. We want minimum wage raised to $15. You know, we want great education. Do we want a lower tuition for college students? So those resolutions can be the basis for those action items, action agenda that the state party would put maybe as a priority going into the legislature. Adrian asked me, as a former senator, when I was a senator, do we go by those things? Well, I have principles, and I am a Democrat, so I pretty much follow what my party likes to do. There's some tricky votes on occasion just because of the district that I had. Senate District 20 is split, Republican, Democrat, so I had to be very careful about my constituency, and thankfully most votes aren't strict party lines on most bills up there, but for the most part I did stick to what I believe in terms of the Democratic platform. Sometimes you see some platform planks butt heads when you have environmentalists and labor unions, you know, in terms of pipelines and such, and that's where things get a little interesting at the Capitol, when your own caucus members are sometimes debating some of those issues. But I think I have some resolution forms coming. They might, or they won't be. But I tell you, they are downloadable from the DFL website. Looks like this, and if you wrote it on a napkin and brought it there, sometimes they've asked you, could you just write it on here real quick? They'll give you one of these, or I've seen them attach a staple to it, and then it goes on from there. Okay? I've seen some people forget these, and then they just got a notebook piece of paper. Here's a resolution. So that's how informal it can be over the years. But they divide up your resolution into all these different areas: energy, education, consumer, retirement, transportation, veterans affairs, ag, food. So, you know, and be it resolved. They start that for you in a sentence or two. I notice some people think that they're actually get into these debates, and that's great, and they argue them to the point that like they will become law once this precinct caucus is over. Just remember that it's a general statement of this is what we believe in, that you're not legislating, that it might make the evening go a little quicker, but I appreciate being passionate and getting your point across to your fellow party members. That's pretty important. Lastly, and we are going to take questions after both of us are finished. If you can't make it on February 6th, there is, oops, I think that's a Republican. There is a document that's a non-attendee form. If you'd like to be a delegate to the next level, you just fill out this form, have someone bring it for you, and you can be possibly an attendee, a delegate to the next level, to either the Rice County or CD2. And from there, they pick to the state convention, by the way. So get one of these. You can get them online as well, on the websites, I'm sure, from either party. And just fill it out, send it along with someone that will be going to the caucus. So again, I thank you for listening to my part. I'm excited to hear from Jennifer, and I'll be happy to answer your questions here when we're done. Thanks.
My name is Jennifer DeJournett. As you mentioned, I am on my park board. Actually, I'm an elected Three Rivers Park Board Commissioner up in the Metro. I represent Maple Grove, Brooklyn Park, Osseo, Dayton, Champlin. That's about 174,000 voters. My district goes from Minority Leader to Melissa Hortman to Majority Leader Joyce Pepin. So in terms of political spectrums, that's a pretty big difference, right? I'm with American Majority. American Majority is a conservative training organization. We've trained in all 50 states and since its inception in 2008, almost 42,000 people to date. So today we're going to talk about the caucus training, and don't worry, we're not going to get into conservative political philosophy. What I am going to teach you how to do is be extremely effective. So when you go into caucus today, you'll know exactly what you need to do, and more importantly, whoever you're supporting, if you have candidates that you like, or you're leaning towards someone, or you're undecided, I'm going to give you a couple tips and tricks of how you can be extremely effective and make it worth your time and make a difference. Is that okay with everyone? Yeah. Okay. All right. So caucus. Let's see. Oh, I should turn on my thing here. Okay, I'd like to start with this picture. This is a compilation of the American flag, of photographs of people at various rallies all across the country. Those people showed up for an idea, some first time ever showing up because they were frustrated about something, and said, you know what, I'm gonna make a difference. And those people did. This is from 2008, 2009, but regardless, the sentiment is still the same. Our American political process is great because everyday people from all walks of life can get together and change and make change. American Majority's philosophy is that. We believe fundamental change happens at the local level because that's where most rules and regulations happen in our life, and I agree, those people do that. So that's what caucus is. If you ever want to get a hold of us, I'm on Facebook and I'm on Twitter, and there's my email. So I'm pretty accessible. Please ask me if you have follow-up questions after that. I'm kind of committed to making sure people are really effective. So let's get to it. What is caucus? Well, caucus is basically the start of the political process in Minnesota. It literally is the start of it. It's basically one big election political rally, if you want to think about it like that, at its fundamental level. The precinct caucus is a big deal. It's actually in state statute, and it has 4 stated purposes. The first one, the one that people think is frivolous all the time, and I'm going to tell you why it's not, which is, it is to vote for the person you want to support for governor and lieutenant governor. On the Democrat side, you got some lieutenant governor floating around. On the Republican side, no one's declared any lieutenant governor. So for the purpose of this presentation, let's just say governor. The second stated purpose is to choose, like you said, the volunteers that will run your political organization, choose delegates who will endorse, and then work on your party's platform, which is the whole reason why you're there. A lot of people, when they get in there, don't realize that you can only attend one caucus, and in Minnesota, the only 2 parties that are required to have a caucus this year are the Republicans and the Democrats, because they are declared major parties. The Libertarians, Independents, everybody and their brother parties are less than 5%. They're declared minor parties. They are not legally required to have a caucus. Some years they do, this year they're not. I checked with all of them. Attending caucus makes a huge difference, whether it's local city council, school board, state legislature, governor, or in my case, presidential years. Last presidential cycle, I was Carly Fiorina's state political director for her presidential campaign, managing a field team of 8. Trust me, I spent months planning for one night, and then it didn't work out, so be it, but it's a big deal. I mean, it's a really big deal, really big. And the reason it is because at its fundamental level, the caucus is the first test of any political campaign's political operation. If they can't, at the caucus level, pull off a statewide campaign, let's say they do really great in my case, Maple Grove, please clap, I'm proud of them. But this state's a big state. If they can't reach greater Minnesota, the metro, the urban areas, the suburban rings, and they can't show some kind of sign of life, how are they gonna run a campaign like 10 months from now? They're not, right? So at this point, it tells you as the political consumer, the voter, is you're the person you love at this very minute, whether they're gonna be viable or you should continue shopping for other candidates or causes or whatever. So you're like, well, where do I start, Jennifer? That's great, you got me fired up. Now tell me where to go. Well, the first is, every caucus, when you look around and you see people who don't know why they're kind of new, or even yourself, identify why you're gonna go on a Tuesday night at 6:30 p.m. when there's a lot of other things you could be doing. Are you there because you have a favorite candidate, because you're rallying for them? Are you there because you're passionate about some issue, just to learn more, curious, or just because you're there for loyalty for friends? And sometimes that last one is the whole reason why I go, because trust me. Or you're there for some combination of the above. All of those are very valid reasons. The governor's preference vote is a big deal because a lot of candidates' campaigns will die if they don't do well on that night. And whoever wins will be able to tell their donors, their supporters, the media, whatever, I have momentum. I don't know how each party does it, but sometimes on the Republican side you'll see a lot of hashtags with so-and-so momentum. And the fact is they're right, they will have that. So if you have somebody you're supporting, I don't really care who it is or what it is, you need to right now think of 3 reasons why you're supporting your said candidate. And I usually have a little handout that I give, but it's in my bag. I don't want to get it right now. But in your pocket, when you go to caucus, you should have 3 reasons why written down. You should go talk to those campaigns and you should say, do you have a letter you want me to read for you in my precinct room or with the bigger group? Is there some message you want me to deliver to my friends and my neighbors that night? What do you want me to say? If you call them up or email them and they have no idea, that should be a red flag, by the way. You should tell them, hey, I don't know if you know this, but caucus is in less than 20 days. Get your act together, FYI. And as political consumers, you can say that to them. But you should be able to do it. If you are supporting someone and you know right now you have your favorite person, be their advocate. For that moment in time and that date, you are their political campaign. Your whole entire goal at caucus should be, I'm going to try to get 1 or 2 or 3 more votes for my candidate in my precinct room. Because that little bit of difference, if it happens statewide, could mean the difference between winning and losing. It's a big deal. If you don't have a candidate, that's totally okay. Because right now, a lot of people don't. But you should think to yourself, what are my 3 wish list items I hope to have in a candidate, whatever it is. And then you should find those people who are wearing the stickers and the buttons and the t-shirts and the funny hats for their candidate. And you should challenge them and say, okay, I'm undecided. I don't know who to vote for tonight. Tell me why it has to be your guy or your girl. Tell me, why is it? Why must it be that person? Have conversations with people. Don't let the perfect, stop you from voting for someone that night, but realize that you're a valuable person to every campaign and let them try to convince you. So I said that already. So so if I was doing, so let's say if I was doing, let's try to think of a name here that's not somebody running. Mary, let's see, Mary Atwater, I don't even know if that's a person. And I was a big supporter of Mary Atwater. I would go, hi, my name is Jennifer, if I was speaking to my precinct room. And I want you to know that I'm supporting Mary Atwater for governor. You know, I've met her and I've met her family and I've seen her team, and I know their campaign is strong. She believes in tax reform, which is a big deal to me. And more importantly, I believe that she cares about Minnesota and she will work every day for our state, and I am confident if you vote for her, she will do right by us and she will work hard and she will win. So if you don't know who to vote for, you vote for her. And I would really work hard to do that. I would practice it. And because it is, like I said, a really, really, really big deal, that voting thing. So I have a little handout and I will, maybe you can help me pass it out. So just so you remember, here you go, there we go. There's like maybe this, the other half of the room. But it's basically a summary. So if you're a candidate supporter today, number one, bring a friend or two with you to that caucus. Every vote really will matter. I mean, some of these races, this preference vote won't be by a lot of votes, so that really will make a difference. Ask campaigns for suggestions, make them tell you. Ask for talking points or a letter or whatever they want to say. If you see someone, and you know people who are veterans here of the caucus process, someone walking in and they're looking around and I've never seen them before and they don't know where they're going. If you're supporting a candidate, you should be that new person's best friend, right? You should introduce yourself to them and you should just help them get to where they need to go and introduce them to other people so that they feel welcome, so that they come back. And it's a big, so that's a big thing that you can do. That's an easy thing to do because it's so easy if you're a veteran of the caucus process to kind of treat these events like big family reunions where we cluster with people that we know and we share the gossip that's going on and forget that everybody's new, and if you don't feel welcome, you're not coming back and participating any longer. And then finally, run for delegate to your own local party's convention, and I'll get more into that later. If you're undecided, ask questions and encourage people to talk about their candidates and to get you more information. Don't let the perfect become undecided and run for delegate. But before I move on, I'll say one more point. Nobody should mark undecided on a preference vote on caucus night. Undecided votes do nothing for any political party's candidates. All that does is confuse everybody. All that does is let the mainstream media talk about, and other activists and maybe some thinking about candidates say, oh, maybe I could get in later in the process. And all it does is stall the momentum of everybody, and it makes it just a big mess. Because the point of the preference vote isn't to be wishful thinking. It's really meant to say, tonight, on this moment, if the election happened today, here is who my choices are, and here is who I would vote for. So don't write Mickey Mouse, don't write undecided, make a decision, and do it as informed as you possibly can be. Okay, so let's see. All right, so back to delegate. And I hope I'm not repeating you, so kick me if I'm repeating you, right? Okay, so sometimes we use these words and nobody knows what we're talking about, especially if they're new. A delegate and an alternate delegate, what are they? Well, a delegate is who decides the party nominee for their political party based on the convention they're attending, which he explained. Delegates play an important role in vetting candidates and advocating for issues that they care about. That's the actual definition. An alternate delegate, well, you just get to go, you fill in for the delegates if they don't show up, right? It's sort of like the understudy in a play. There's several levels. Here where we are on February 6th, the precinct caucus, it doesn't matter what party you are, that's where you are. There's sometimes two sets of conventions. A regular BPOU, basic party operating unit. Do you guys call it, Democrats call it that?
Organizing unit.
Organizing unit, okay. They elect delegates, like you said, to the congressional district level and to the state convention. Each party might do that a little bit differently. They may endorse candidates, or they may choose not to. Sometimes some first level conventions might kick that to an endorsing convention later, and that's totally legitimate. It just kind of, so you need to follow the rule convention call to see what's actually going on. A congressional district and then the state convention, where they'll do statewide candidates and finally vote through the resolution process. There's a couple things that people don't always talk about when at the caucus, but become very important later. The first is, to the caucus, it's free. There's no cost to attend a caucus, and your employer, if you give them 10 days notice, and we're getting closer to that window, has to give you the night off if you request it to attend your local caucus. So if you're organizing a convention, there's plenty of times for letters to the editor to go out to let people know that they can get the night off if they want to attend. So to not let that be a hindrance. But when you move up the process to the conventions, there is a cost. Some areas charge as little as $5. Some areas charge for the first level convention $50. I don't know what you charge in this area specifically. How much? Nothing? How much is your convention?
It can be anywhere. I've paid to a county convention 25, to the state 75.
What about to a legislative?
Those are usually, I think they take a free will donation.
Okay, all right, so you guys are free. See, so it makes a difference. So when you have people in your caucus room signing up to be delegates, make sure that you let them know this first convention, if there's a free will, or if there's a cost. That kind of is important. No one should be surprised, right? Let people know when they, oh yes, ma'am. You have to pay for the convention yourself, yes. Yeah, it depends, yeah. And the call, or depends what convention you're going to. So, for example, in my area, to attend the caucus, to attend a convention, caucus is free. To attend a convention's like $50, and then the CD convention's probably another $50, and the state convention's probably $100. But that's one process, right? What's your process, similar?
Similar.
Similar, right? So a lot of people don't know that. So I've been at conventions where people didn't realize there was a fee, and they show up and they're really disappointed because they couldn't afford it or didn't go or whatever, and it became a very complicated conversation. So I believe in full disclosure when people are running. Let people know how long a convention takes before they start running for delegate, right? So a convention, if it's a contested one, could take a few hours. If it's uncontested, you might be out of there in an hour and a half. If you have somebody that's really, chatty, and the things are going long, well, you might want to bring a sack lunch. But the point is that people's perspectives, if they're brand new, may not know that. So it's really important we over-explain throughout the caucus process. Another thing I want to say is new people don't know how to become delegate, and they kind of find this process intimidating. So I tell people, especially those who are coming to their first caucus, it is important that you learn how to raise your hand as fast as you can. We are not, do not be a polite Minnesotan when people ask you, you want to be a delegate? Do you want to put your name in for consideration? Don't be like, oh, I don't know if I can raise my hand right now. Maybe I should wait and be like the fourth person. No. Be delegate sharks. The first time someone says, do you want to run for something? Yes, I do, right now, put my name down. Because what happens is, like in my area, I might have 25 delegate spots. Jennifer DeJournett's name is always number one, first one, right? Then by the time other people start getting brave and start deciding they want to run, all the spots are gone. There's like 3 left and 25 people that want to be it. And now they're out, right? Sometimes you get into situations where you don't have enough people to fill a full delegate slate, and then you'll see empty spots. I'm going to empower everyone in this room right now. Leave no delegate spot at this level unfilled. My husband, Todd DeJournett, has never gone, I mean, this is like the full disclosure for him, but has never gone to a political caucus, right? Todd DeJournett is always a delegate or an alternate to every political convention, always. Because if there's an empty spot, no, I nominate him. Because I don't want the end of a process to be for the nomination process for political candidates, for it to be over for someone that would have continued to show up and volunteer and be involved just because they couldn't make it on a Tuesday night, right? I typically don't nominate someone who I know is never going to show up. I try not to, but I really am really particular about that. And if someone in the caucus room goes, well, you don't know if he really wants to be it, look at them with the most sincere face you have and go, really, we're going to leave that space blank? Is that the point here? No, the point is we want to get people involved, right? So that's the other point I want to make about that. Leave no delegate spot in your room unfull. If you're supporting a candidate for, let's say for governor, you should have a pocket list of their supporters so you know from your precinct who you can make sure to fill that up. I mean, there's a strategy through this whole process for that. Next thing, okay, party platforms. You guys will like this. This is kind of nerdy. This is for my professor friend here. From 1948 to 2012, here are 2 slides that show the changes in party platforms. This one is opportunity in party platforms per 1,000 words. And the red is the Republican line and the Democrat line. So you can see they kind of go up and down. This one is fairness and freedom in party platforms. So one is mentions of fairness and equity versus freedom and liberty. So my point of this is not to get into the debate of it, but to show you that party platforms for both parties are living, breathing documents. They change with the temperament of what's going on in society and what's important in the values of every party. So it's a good thing to remember. Each party develops them, obviously, and anyone can do proposals to them. But here's Jennifer's rules for party platform changes, right? Number 1, don't propose any resolution unless you've actually read the party platform of the document you're trying to amend. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been at caucuses and someone wants to amend something. First question out of my head is, when I convene it, have you read the platform? Person looks at me and goes, no. I said, well, what are you amending then, right? Let's talk about that.
Where do we read this party platform?
Yep, okay, so the Democrat one is on their website. So you go Google it, and then it'll be there. I believe it's on their caucus page further down. And the Republican one, if you need it, I can get it, and I have some copies here. The Republican one is the condensed version, is 4 pages, right? Like in sub font, like multiple lines. But both parties are very verbose, but yes, but you should read it. It's a good exercise because you certify when you sign into caucus that you agree with that document. And we all know what lawyers would say, never sign something you haven't read, right? It's important. The second is, but after you've read it and you want to make a change, speak up early. Know other people in your area that are political, let them know about it, start gaining support, and let your local political party leaders know that you're going to make a resolution change. Make your resolution simple and clear, and let's see, oh here. So like the Republican one, right? There's only like 6 lines that they intentionally give you. The Democrats, you guys have like a little bit longer, right? Give more space.
Category.
But the point is that it's not a large amount of space, right? I had somebody who showed up at a precinct caucus once that came with a 10-page single space, not kidding you, front and back resolution they wanted to add into the platform. Totally sincere about it too. And the point is that too long, too complicated. So make your resolution simple and clear and to the point. Be prepared to politely discuss your idea just because you think adding peanut butter to every aisle of Cub Foods in the 7th row is important, not everybody else will, right? Let's face it. So be prepared to politely defend it and listen. Build support. To change a party's statewide platform is a big deal. So you're not going to be able to just do that with passing it in one precinct. You gotta build support across a whole congressional district, across statewide. So find other people who agree with you and get them to pass the identical language you're going to pass in yours, so that you can make that move forward by the momentum of your support. It's sort of like a political campaign for ideas. It's okay. And follow up and volunteer. You should always, if you're really passionate about whatever your issue is, I don't really care what it is, then you should make sure that you follow up 100% on that, and make sure that your resolution doesn't die in committee like that bill. What is it? That little bill from Schoolhouse Rock, remember? That one, that little cartoon commercial where it just died because nobody kept it moving through the process. Here you go, can you pass it off? Yeah. And so, so make sure that you follow up, volunteer, offer to be on your congressional district's resolution committee, volunteer to be on your state resolution committee. Because if you're in the room and you have a seat at the table, it's hard for your idea to die, because it always has a champion if you're that passionate about it. So be determined. So a couple things to remember. That's me over there with the blah, blah, blah. Listen to be heard. If your idea is great and you're passionate about it, listen to the objections to why it's not going to work. That'll help you when you get to your local convention or your congressional convention, and you have to start advocating, because you know what the other side's going to say about why your idea shouldn't go forward. Platforms, like you said, are not directives to any elected official. A lot of times people get really passionate about it. It's in the party platform, and they feel like they're telling people what to do, and they have to do it. Guess what? People who have election certificates are not required to follow a party's platform. So it's important to understand that. It's basically the overarching umbrella document of what each group believes, and when they say, I'm a whatever you affiliate with. So just make sure you understand that. And then the last thing is, I don't know, it's usually the last thing on the agenda. So there's 2 points to make on that. Some people come to caucus specifically to talk about resolutions. They've waited an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to get to this point. So if you're convening a precinct, you need to make sure you're respectful of that and let that conversation happen, because they've been waiting and waiting and waiting for that to happen. Now on the other end, if you're really passionate about that point, realize it's the last thing on the agenda, and sometimes people want to go home. So make sure that you're making your point, but it's not a time for people to get on the soapbox and make it a 2-hour conversation either. So there's a push and pull, and when I convene my precinct, I usually get an agreement of the room to say, okay, we're going to talk about these resolutions for the next 25 minutes. Is everybody okay with that? We're going to give each one a couple minutes. And then when we get to 25, if we're not done, we're going to talk about how much more time we're going to allot. Everyone agree? Everybody does, so that way we have people who are in the room who want to go know there's an exit point, right? And people who are passionate about the idea know what everybody in the room's agreed to before we've started. It's just a good housekeeping thing to do. So the last thing I'm going to talk about really fast is volunteers, because it's a stated purpose. I mean, the whole point of caucus is to start rallying volunteers. You know, one of the things people don't understand when they agree to be a precinct leader for their area is it's overwhelming. People just say, I'll do it, because nobody else is raising their hand. But it's a very important thing. You're the point person for your local area. You're supposed to go and know your neighbors and help them get more involved, get them more information, connect them to people who they want to connect to. You're a people connector, right? That's a good thing to be. So it's easy to find people to volunteer, quite frankly, if you're actively recruiting in your churches, in your neighborhoods, in your friends, in your book clubs, in your bingo groups, whatever, as long as you're actively trying to do it. Because the fact is that people are interested in what you say politically more than you think. If they know you and they respect you as a person, they might be interested in your political point of view, whether they agree with it or not. Because the average person, we don't know this, but the average person, according to a Yale study, knows 611 people in their lives. That's a lot of people. And you're like, really? Like, I see you're being skeptical. You really do know 611 people. If you had to sit down and start jotting it out, some more in deep than others, and some more superficially. But the point is that each one of us is a people collector. So it's important to be that point person for them. Because most people in their lives are told they can't talk about politics anywhere else. So just so you know, you should be that person for them. Yeah, don't laugh, it's important. So to kind of wrap this up, I want to leave you with just a couple points so we can move on to questions. One, everybody in this room should be the first person to raise their hand. Oh yeah, see, I got one. When you're told, do you want to volunteer? Do you want to be a delegate? And do you have something to say? Don't wait. I'm empowering you. I'm from the south side of Chicago, so you can say the south side girls said so. Because by you being brave and being the first one, you're going to empower somebody else to be the next one. They're not going to wait after you. Ask if someone you care about in this governor's race, ask people to vote for your candidate. People will vote for someone who they see is passionate about their person, right? Tell them, yeah, this is just a one-time vote. That's okay, vote for my guy or girl. It's totally fine. You don't have to be wedded to this. No one will know it's a secret ballot. The point is you want to help your candidate, and if you don't know, push these people that are so passionate in February. Why? Why that person? It's good to know. It's a good conversation starter. And the last thing is always in your life, collect names. You never know when you're going to connect person A to person B. I just did this for someone, a young kid looking for a job the other day. My good friend Ivana texted me and said, hey, I have a friend who's looking for a job, and do you know someone? I happen to have another friend who I knew was looking for someone to hire, and I connected the two, right? Like within 2 minutes. And the point is, in politics, it's the same thing. If you always have a list and you're constantly building lists, you can constantly mobilize people in an instant. And caucus really is the start of that process. So I will end with this slide where I started to the beginning. Those people are an inspiration to me, regardless of whether or not I agree with them on every issue politically or not. They're people who were brave, who showed up on a certain day and said, today I'm going to make a difference. And I'm going to take faith and have hope that if I do this and show up, others will join me and the world will change, right? That's important. That's what the caucus is in Minnesota, and that's why it's important. It's not the millions of dollars in political ad spending or the inundations of all these mailers and kind of gets us. It's everyday people getting together in their communities, neighbor to neighbor, having a discussion homegrown. So that's why you should go, and you should get some friends to go with you. So thank you very much.